So I grew up in the 70s, 80s, the old seedy Times Square. I remember a time where there was just like garbage piled up. I remember one time going into one of the abandoned buildings and hanging out the second floor, and I grabbed the frame and I fell out backwards. But the garbage was piled up so high below that I just landed on a pile of like doors and stuff like that. I didn't get hurt at all. I've seen it on the buildings, on the train, but it wasn't until the one moment where I got off a subway car and the doors closed and I see this cartoon character and I was like, whoa, I want to do that. So I went back to my neighborhood and I just started asking everyone, yo, I saw some stuff on the subway. And they're like, oh man, that's graffiti. I'm like, what is it? They're like, oh, graffiti, you gotta get a name, and you gotta get up. And from that point, that's going back now 37 years. And I just continued to just go and sit hours on end just at a platform, just watching trains go by, checking out the colors, the letter styles, and thinking like, oh my goodness, like this stuff is amazing. And I remember going behind a schoolyard. They had like this little space, little alley about 4 feet wide, and I had a silver and a green, and I did like a little piece behind the schoolyard. Nobody could see it. Nobody would even go back there. And then from there, kind of ventured out like, all right, where I want to go to the train. So I went. We got a little more paint. I had like a blue, silver, and a black. I went, trains were there. It was like a Sunday early. So it was like this little thing, maybe like a mosquito bite, you want to call it. And then I waited like, a week, 2 weeks went by. Finally, like I saw my little itty bitty thing run by and I was like, yes. Tats Cru originally started out TAT. The original members was myself, Brim, Mac, and Bass. There was 4 of us. When I got to high school, I met BG and I said, oh, we'll become the rest of the crew. At that point, the crew grew to about 10 or 12. We had already been at it a few years, so at this point, we already were a little force to be reckoned with. We have always believed we were good, but then everyone else started to believe it. It wasn't until years later that it became Tats Cru. That comes later, like in the 90s when we met rapper Fat Joe. At the time, he was writing crack, and he had a crew called TS. It's changed in so many ways. I mean, even from the simple things like, back then we had a limited color palette. Nowadays, you have companies that produce spray paint specifically for graffiti artists, and you have 250 colors. You have specialty caps from the skinniest to the fattest, and you may have 30 different caps to choose from. Back then you had a thin cap and a fat cap. Back then you had guys who did characters, but now being that you have so much access to more tools, people are doing full out like portraits, like hyper realism with spray paint. If you gave some of the artists who are painting today the tools that we had to work with back then, they'd be like, I can't work with this. This is water. This is shit. I can't do nothing. Now you got guys who are talented, can paint, but they have no letter style, no hand style. Like if they write, it just doesn't look like anything. Even though they're great artists, they've lost that foundation of graffiti starts with the letter.